Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, got flood watch here out for the areas, or the northwestern part of the Alaska Range here. This shot includes McGrath and Nikolai, but it doesn't actually. This is for the area from Denali Park on down to Rainy Pass. That's the area the flood watch is in effect for, and that's for tonight and through tomorrow afternoon. For possible flooding, 2 to 4 inches of rain has fallen in that area, in the watch area, over the last day or so, and it's going to continue through tonight. By Tuesday morning, could be another 1 to 2 inches of rain falling in those areas. So pretty good potential for some flooding. And for the next shot here, this is Prudhoe Bay, or near Prudhoe Bay, and big improvement in the weather up there from what it was yesterday with the strong winds and the rain with that storm rolling through. Today, just still some clouds around, also some breaks, as you can see. Not a bad day up there on the tundra. And the next shot here, coming south, this one's Port Hayden on the Bristol Bay or Bristol Bay side of the Alaska Peninsula, and nothing but sunshine there. And actually this pattern extends up to Pilot Point and eastward across Kodiak Island. Sunshine temperatures here nearing 70 degrees at mid-afternoon today. Moving on to the one more, there we go, fire danger. We've got none up here in the north now. It's gone with all the precipitation you've had, but kind of seeing a little resurgence here in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, kind of a growing, expanding area of high to very high fire danger, as well as the Kenai Peninsula. That due to today temperatures rising into the lower 80s, Kenai Peninsula, and 75 to 80 up in the valleys there, and same thing for Anchorage area, 75 to 80 at mid-afternoon. Copper River Basin also kind of starting to regrow a little bit from what I had yesterday, although it's hard to notice on this scale of the map. But again, temperature 70s to lower 80s over there as well this afternoon, with Chitina having the warm spot in the state at 83 degrees. So probably see these areas possibly expand, probably will, since really not much chance of any rain in the foreseeable future. And for the satellite imagery, lots of clear skies here. Hard to tell on the infrared shot here, but it was. Actually, it shows up pretty good on this shot. This is actually the low cloud deck here. They're south of Kodiak Island, and then the clear skies from Kodiak up along the North Gulf Coast and down along much of the southeast coast there. A little bit of low clouds and fog are actually more extensive than what that shows, and dense fog advisories ended over the southern inside water areas. But there was some light precipitation, drizzle, but amounts are quite light, very just thick dew from heavy fog down there, and that could repeat itself tomorrow morning. Otherwise, we've got moisture still feeding northeastward here. Very weak low out over the Bering Sea, getting this side of it. And right here, it looks like another one out there toward Shimia. And then up here to the north, we have an upper disturbance crossing the Beaufort Sea. And that's just bringing clouds, mid and high clouds it appeared to be, here into the western Arctic coast. Any precipitation falling out of that's pretty light and scattered, and better conditions off here to the east after that storm. Remnants of that is over in here of yesterday. Came through those 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts. And then clouds this right up, still raining here up over Denali Park, and places like Wonder Lake and Toledo had half an inch of rain today, while down the a little farther on down, Bethel had roughly 2/3 of an inch of precipitation, with winds gusting to 30 miles an hour ahead of this. Cape Newenham, 3/4 of an inch of rain, had wind gusts 50 miles an hour, so that's kind of an exposed area there. Cape Newenham, where usually the strongest wind gusts occur. And Cold Bay, 45 miles an hour in the wind. So a little bit of a gradient here, kind of breezy in advance of this system that's bringing rain down across the eastern Aleutians, mostly Unmak Island. Otherwise, rolling this to today's chart, this shows up the clear areas a lot nicer here. You can see eastern Bristol Bay across the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak, sunshine, on up into Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula, and Copper River Basin area with the frontal boundary up here along and north of the Alaska range, lightening up on the precipitation over through here. Steadier, still, as I mentioned, moderate amounts of rain falling, and expected to continue through tonight in that flood watch area. And then that tapers off up to the north today and break out into sunshine here, upper Yukon Valley. And looks like part of the north slope in the Brooks Range, not too bad. And temperatures in the Yukon Flats rising into the lower to mid-70s at mid-afternoon. Otherwise, everybody else in the 60s, except out west down into the 50s. And this front out here over the Bering Sea, past the Pribilofs, hung up over the eastern Aleutians. And we'll see for tonight, kind of pushes northeastward here. Very weak, though, not a very strong frontal boundary. In fact, you're going to lose the winds that it had today are going to be lost tonight. The gradient will weaken, and it's sort of dying a slow death here in a ridging area of building high pressure from this center up in across the eastern and northern Bering Sea. Warm front moisture, again, continues to rain, another 1 to 2 inches possible. Denali Park to rainy tonight. And actually, probably see an increase in precipitation now over the eastern interior as that last slug of moisture shifts eastward tonight and in toward the border. Otherwise, south of the mountains, fair, warm, mild, and mostly clear with light winds. Could get a little breezy later tonight, possibly through the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, maybe even Kodiak. Otherwise, light winds, Arctic coast, low clouds, fog, especially on the east side and the southeast coast. That disturbance brought a little bit of light rain or drizzle to the southern areas, so that should shift off to the south. We're still prone to seeing another dense fog advisory form over the southern inside waters, and look for fog to develop and push in right along the outer coastline. Otherwise, tomorrow, a repeat of today again, back into the 70s, mostly sunny after areas of morning low clouds and fog. Showers possibly develop. That's going to be probably Skagway would be as far south as those get, and then they'll extend back up to the northwest here. Some of the taller clouds could develop into an isolated thunderstorm here over the eastern interior, and then just showers scattering out. This moisture will be diminishing throughout the day, becoming lighter and more showery, and then kind of linger, though, across the southwest interior along this trough axis, kind of on top of this ridge. Sunshine again, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, southern Alaska, south central into the Copper River Basin, a day almost identical to today, and also pretty good up there for the Brooks Range and the North Slope areas. Out west, still a weak front, keeping a chance of, or probably will keep light rain, fog, and drizzle, and IFR flying conditions actually from the eastern Aleutians here all the way out to Shimei and Attu. Heaviest precipitation, which won't be that heavy, could see maybe 5 to 1500s falling at Adak and Atka with traces or just a hundredth or two out towards Nikolsky, same thing back towards Shimei. But winds not a problem at all. As you can see, just 3 isobars here across the entire area. And this weak low coming eastward here, that'll spread a chance of light rain, fog, and drizzle with it onto the western Arctic coast and to Point Hope and Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. And really just a risk at Kivalina. You may get some tomorrow evening. And we'll see that low continues eastward to right near the coast, kind of a trough here between this low over the eastern interior. And that one, look for enhanced showers along that trough axis, staying fair and dry, north slope to the Arctic coast. Chance afternoon showers along this trough from the low center here, risk of a thunderstorm over the eastern interior, and also a risk of a thunderstorm down here over the southern southeast coast. Otherwise sunny with highs in the 70s, and that thunderstorm shower threat would be restricted to Hyder and Stewart. And for lows for tonight, mid to upper 50s there for the Panhandle, 55 to 60 southern Alaska with mid 50s, lower to mid eastern interior, right on down the Yukon Kuskokwim River valleys out to the deltas, near 50 along the coast, and upper 30s for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline, as well as areas of the North Slope. And for the highs tomorrow, we've got upper 50s there for the central Aleutians and mid 60s for the eastern Aleutians, and in the 60s, 65-ish here for the Alaska Peninsula, maybe pushing up towards 70, Pilot Point to King Salmon, and 75 to 85 south central Alaska, Madawaska-Susitna Valley, 70s to maybe near 80 again for the Copper River Basin, 65 to 70 up in the interior. Arctic coast, central and east side, mid to upper 40s, mid 50s on the west side, 60s, mid 60s, Ambler and Kotzebue. And looking at Wednesday morning lows, Pretty mild here for the southeast coast, 55 to 60, and near 50 in the Copper River Basin, back into the upper 50s, south central Alaska, Kodiak Island, and mid to upper 40s over the eastern interior, near 40 for the Brooks Range, upper 30s again for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, highs 75 to 85 south central Alaska, and near 70 over the central interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Tuesday morning. Solid IFR, Aleutians, Bering Sea, improving as you head north here, and VFR, St. Lawrence Island, right across Seward Peninsula, Bering Strait, right up along the northwest coast and the western Arctic coast there, until you get to about, say, Wainwright, and then from roughly there eastward, it's IFR. Pretty much VFR here in the northern interior, but a lot of IFR sliding up west and north of the Alaska Range into the Tanana Valley, and some of that getting into the Talkeetans as well. But it looks like, say from Kodiak on up into Cook Inlet, Matanuska-Susitna Valley, looks like pretty good VFR conditions, as well as Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin. IFR due to low clouds of fog along the southeast coast, and again, like the last couple of days, probably developing over the southern inside waters. And that will burn off in the afternoon, but look for some IFR to linger along areas of the outer coastline here, up to roughly Yakutat. You'll probably be VFR late in the afternoon. Otherwise, VFR over the inside waters, and mostly VFR here, south central Alaska, areas south and again east of the Alaska Range, looking really good. Kodiak VFR, Prince William Sound as well. Marginal VFR along and on the north side of the Alaska Range here. Then from out Denali Park, you got IFR lingering on that. On the excuse me, on the west side of the mountains, northern half of the state, pretty good VFR, except look for some marginal, possibly IFR conditions right along the central eastern Arctic coast. And here some IFR over the southwest interior again, and the coast on out to the west. For Wednesday morning, looks like some IFR creeping up to the south side of St. Lawrence Island there. Still VFR for the Bering Strait and Seward Peninsula, northwest coast, Kotzebue Sound, interior valleys here, northern interior valleys, and north slope looking pretty good. Some marginal VFR, western Brooks Range, and that infamous IFR there along and just off the Arctic coast on the east side. IFR also still hanging on to the panhandle. Again, may redevelop once again over the southern areas, and then burn off again probably by during the morning hours actually. Could linger maybe on the coast there of Prince of Wales Island, otherwise up to the north looking really good. VFR here, south central Alaska, and improving. Now just some spotty marginal VFR showing up in the eastern interior here from the Wrangell Mountains or Nebezna on up in toward the White Mountain areas. VFR basically over the interior, some leftover marginal VFR for the Brooks Range, no change on the Arctic coast, no change really out in the Bering Sea. And for passes, Anatuvik starting out marginal, becoming VFR. That trend also holds for Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR to start and then becoming marginal and then mostly marginal into the afternoon. Be a general improving trend throughout the day. And that same forecast also for rainy. IFR to start, lowest conditions to start, and then best conditions in the latter part of the afternoon. Rainy or windy, IFR becoming marginal VFR. And Isabel, marginal VFR becoming VFR. Same forecast for Mentasta, better in the afternoon than the morning. And Tanita, marginal VFR becoming VFR. And Portage looks pretty good with VFR flying there. And Chilcoot White, good VFR. Looking at the freezing levels here, 14,000 feet holds on. Upper level ridge out here over the Gulf of Alaska hasn't really moved much the last several days. And 12,000 feet, actually that ridge starting to build back, or ridge into the southeast Bering Sea. You see 12,000 feet making a jog back up to the north there. And then the gradient here across the northern half of the state, still kind of cool up there along the Arctic coast, about 2,000 feet. And for icing, this area here shifting eastward, best chance of icing in the morning hours and then diminishing as that pulls off to the east into Canada there, mostly above about 7,000 feet, light to isolated rime, and then tapering off considerably back to the west. This area slipping on in from the west there will make landfall possibly by midday tomorrow on the western Arctic coast, Point Hope, Cape Lisbon. With that west-northwest jet, 90 knots, pushing that area of moisture on in. High pressure starting to redevelop here over the eastern Bering Sea. And that also showing up here at 9,000 feet. So we're getting a northwest flow tomorrow, 20 to 25 knots, up to 30 knots across the Barren Islands. And for 3,000 feet, northwest 15 to 25, stronger winds here eastern interior, and 5 to 15 knots for the Panhandle, 5 knots for the Arctic coast. Turbulence, isolated occasional moderate chop there, Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, and also over the eastern interior with those gusty westerly winds.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not say a circle.
Kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It is just
moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make 1 lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah, you could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
Takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station. Instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles up. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
The same speed.
Right. The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot,
I see.
and it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture. You can replay that, and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called, because they're stationary in appearance, and they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures. If you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites. That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit, which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation, and they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this, and the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIRS sensor. That's an acronym there. But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail. The kind of detail, because you're close in.
Very high resolution.
You couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by, and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits. Each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion. The same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun, they govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right, okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years. Amazing stuff.
It's a growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on Dehne and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Looking about the same for the most part as yesterday, except this area up here getting wider as the sea ice continues to melt back. In fact, the edge there almost back to Wrangell Island now, and a huge open area well north of the entire coastline. And that same trend expect for the next several days. Could just oscillate here. You know, with a wind or currents, but really, even if there's a big change in the ice edge conditions, it won't affect. It'll be quite a ways away from the coast. And for the coastal water forecast, northwest 20 on the south coast, 7 to 6 foot seas, northwest 15 up north, Lynn Canal south at 10, and light variable winds. Actually, for all of the inside waters, winds variable 10 knots, seas 2 feet, and moving on to Wednesday. I'll pick it up a little bit. Northwest 15 for Clarence Strait, north 10 Stevens Passage, and also north at 20 for northern Lynn Canal 4 foot seas. Looking at the south coast, you can see northwest winds at 20 in the forecast with seas at about 7 feet. But those become lighter and more variable as you head up the coastline to east at 10 there on the extreme north coast. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, northwesterlies 15 knots. Could see some higher west wind gusts coming out of Passage Canal. Possibly tomorrow morning or during the day, but nothing serious. Otherwise, brisk winds west 30 knots. Small craft advisories there for the western North Gulf Coast, 9 foot seas. Gale warnings out for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, looking for west winds at 35 knots, 10 to 13 foot seas. Small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet, southwest at 25, southwest 10, north of the Forelands. Those become north at 10 on Wednesday here, and northwest for southern Cook Inlet. Still pretty brisk from Kamishak Bay across the Barrens, and the gales continue for the Barren Islands, northwest 35 with 9 foot seas, 20 knot northwest winds for the western North Gulf Coast, and Prince William Sound on down into the eastern North Gulf Coast area, north 15. And for Kodiak Island, west winds 25 knots, seas 6 to 7 feet. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, west winds at 20 knots with seas at 6 feet. And the Pacific side of the peninsula, southwesterlies at 15, but the Bering Sea side south at 20. And seas not too bad with that 20, about 4 feet, and southwest 15 with 3 foot seas for Bristol Bay. And for the outlook on Wednesday, Bristol Bay west 15, seas 3 feet. We got north winds at 10 knots with 2 foot seas on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Northwest 15, Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape. And then those pick up here with small craft advisories, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, northwest 25, and west-northwest 25 continue to blow across Kodiak Island. And for the Fox Islands on Tuesday, Unalaska Island south 15 to 20 knots, Unmac Island southeast 20 knots, seas 5 to 7 feet, and Adak southeast 20 knots, seas 5 to 7 feet. And then 10 knot winds from Chitka Island, Kiska on out to Shimia, southeast at 10. And that light wind pattern holds through Wednesday here, southeast at 10 for the western Aleutians, west central Aleutians, southeast 15, gradually increasing 20 knots southeast for the Adak area, and Umak Island southeast at 15 to 20 or so, and Unalaska Island lighter with southeast 10 to 15. And for the southwest coast, southwest winds 10 to 15 knots. Light winds up here in Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, 10 knots or less, and south 10 for St. Matthew Island and the Pribilof south at 15. And for Wednesday, south 15 knots for St. Paul, St. George, southwest coast, west 10 to 15, southwest 15 for St. Lawrence Island. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, barely a breeze in some areas here. 10 knots on the east side, maybe northwest 15 toward demarcation point. Central coast on down the west side, we've got easterlies at 15. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, south 20, and then south 15 on down to Wales. Outlook for Wednesday, Wales to Cape Thompson, west 15, and Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, north 20, and then east 20 for the western and central coast, 10 to 15 knot easterlies on toward the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. For tonight, again, rain and a flood watch for the area from Denali Park to Rainy Pass in the Alaska Range for another 1 to 2 inches of rain, flooding possible. Increasing rain as this last batch of moisture moves eastward across the eastern interior. Very weak frontal boundary out here to the west and stays fair in the south. And outlook for tomorrow, sunny and warm, southern Alaska and the Panhandle. Chance of showers in the interior, back to sunshine in the north. And for Wednesday, chance of showers here for the Brooks Range and the central interior, sunny and warm, again, Kodiak to Copper River Basin.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.